Okay, welcome to Off the Bench. Here with Lance Lambert and co-host Chase Kelly. Chaser, how are we doing this week?
Doing pretty good, buddy. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I think we're a little cranky this week, getting through this hard 75 action, changing the mindset. We're a little bit, less carbs, more protein hidden, and a little bit less sleep this week than we'd like to have. So
it's definitely been a factor for me as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we're trying to get emotionally better as well as physically better. That's the battle. I think that's the true battle for us.
I think that's the biggest part of it all, and it's just, God, I hate to say it because I preach it so much, but I just got to keep trusting the process. It's all coming around.
Absolutely, can't get too blinded by those shallow goals we talked about last week.
Yes, exactly.
So let's just hop right into it. It's just been me and you for the first 3 episodes. It'll continue to be that until we find somebody or we want to talk with anybody.
Maybe we'll end up on Rogan. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. But we mentioned at the end of the episode last week about, what does it mean to find your purpose? And I wanted to pick your brain here right off the bat. How do you find your purpose? What is your purpose? What's that process look like for a young man at 22 years old?
So honestly, up until I was about 22 years old, I had no clue what I was going to do with my life. I knew I wanted to be in athletics. I know I like to be in charge. I found purpose through experience. It was one of those things that when the moment felt right, it was right. But I think finding it is truly found within following your passion. Something you're passionate about. For some of you, that might be reading, writing, video games, athletics. You might want, as a kid, if you were thinking, I want to be a professional athlete, look into coaching, look into strength training, look into smaller professional, quote-unquote, hobbies or sports like bodybuilding. Bodybuilding for me is a passion, and that's something I wanted to go into, and I found what I think is my purpose through bodybuilding, and that is strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
I think that's where I really excel.
And I think that allows you. You're a competitive guy, right? And so especially for guys who have been in athletics their entire lives, or just competed in something in general, whether that be in the arts or in something else. It allows you to continue to compete, and that's what I love about coaching. Yes. Even when we're not coaching or not working, we're playing golf, we're bowling. We're doing something so that we can continue to compete, and I really truly believe that that's part of your purpose as well, just from an outside perspective.
I agree with that 100%. That's something I don't even think about, just because competition is second nature to me at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that we have to really, I want to clarify for people listening, is that one thing that I truly believe is that you do not, the common idea or what society would tell you, the mainstream idea is that you have to find your purpose, right?
Right.
Find your passion, follow your passion. When typically our passions can lead us awry sometimes, but you don't find your purpose. I believe truly you make your purpose.
Yeah, see, looking at it from a different perspective like that, I guess I really did make my own purpose, because I fell in love with weight training is what it really was, and my purpose was, or is, to do something in weight training, whether that be strength and conditioning coaching or competing still. I think I followed my passion to but make my purpose.
And the question really it comes down to is it's to be or to do, right?
Yeah.
And many unfortunately, what's plagued our generation or our age group, I guess, is that many people are just stuck in the to be, right? I want to be this, I want to be the greatest, the first, the most, et cetera, or I don't have a single clue what I want to be, and so I stay in the to be section, right? Instead of trying things or creating action in your life, we get stuck in this sort of the whole quarter life crisis thing, which is just insane to me. But it's a reality for some people, and I think how do you get yourself out of the you talked about not knowing exactly what you wanted to do. So how do you get yourself to find that purpose, to make that purpose, rather than being stuck in the to be category?
It's honestly kind of cliche, but it worked for me. I looked at things I like to do, and I just kept doing them until I was like, maybe I can do this forever. I started selling weight training programs at a very young age. I was 18 when I sold my first weight training program, and it was actually to your dad.
Yeah.
And I kind of fell in love with the science behind it, so I was like, let's go to school for it. And messed around in school. I was really going to school to play football. I thought I was going to go into agriculture after school.
Yeah.
I really thought I was going to go waste 4 years of free college and end up in agriculture. And 4 years later, I think being around it so much and pushing it as hard as I did, it led me straight to it.
Yeah, and I think we're lucky because we have people, like my dad, or, we've had people around us that fueled that passion and been able to recognize it for us, kind of for us, right? And put us down that path of making that purpose. And when you make it, you sort of have this realization of, oh wow, I am actually interested in this, and if I can sell it to people or I can make a living out of it, then why wouldn't I do something like that? When the work doesn't feel like work, then
Yes.
you're in the right spot.
That's the difference between a job where you're going to work and a career where you're building your life.
My dad did the same thing with me, becoming an English teacher, and he'll probably remember this story, but at a young age, I asked him, because I was always very involved in sports, looked up to professional baseball players a lot, but I also was curious about authors. And I asked him, do famous authors make as much money as professional athletes? And he said, if you're really good, then yeah. And so that really sparked my interest from actually like 7-8 years old. I started, I was a kid that wrote stories and read a ton, and it led me to become an English major and a teacher, and then I compiled that with coaching. And I was lucky. I was one of the kids that at 15 or 16 years old, I knew I wanted to become a teacher and a coach, or something in that realm where I was helping other people, and I was also following my passion for English and the written word. And so I guess I was lucky in that term, but I definitely could have followed a different path. But in doing so, in creating this life, I've found a profession where going to work does not feel like going to work.
No, I can tell you that firsthand. It's not hard for me watching you. It's not hard for you at all to roll out of bed at 4:30 every day and go and hope that one of the boys shows up at 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, so that we can go lift. And then that transition from the weight room to the classroom, you're happy as can be. You're ready to be at work.
Yeah, and I think you can tell you're in the right place when getting out of bed in the morning isn't a task.
Yes.
Right? And we always go back to nobody's a morning person, right? 4:30 is not always easy every morning, but 4:40 is really high beat, upbeat, energetic. We're excited for our day, and I think that's important.
Yes.
Because if not, then you're spending 8 hours minimum. Okay, some of us spend 4 10s, or depending on your job. If you're a young man starting a business, you're going to spend 80, 90, 100 hours a week. If you're a coach, you are going to spend 100 hours a week at the school at minimum. Okay, you have to understand the commitment there as a leader. You better enjoy that time, because if not, you're spending your entire life, basically your entire waking life, absolutely miserable, and that's not a recipe for success, which we obviously define as healthy and happy.
Right. And honestly, just take a second and think, why would I want to do something that I don't want to do? If I don't want to get up at 4 in the morning and spend 12 hours at the school all day, why would I go into education comboed with coaching?
Right.
That's the downside of it, yes, but that small downside is overweighed by the positives in my own life.
Absolutely. And we want to make a clarification as like, doing things you don't want to do as far as self-discipline are extremely important, right? I don't have to wake up at 4:30, but it's important that I do, right?
Right.
We want to, but as far as, your endeavor, your job, your profession, or the person that you want to become, you don't want to create this person that you do not like. You don't want to create this professional that you do not respect or you do not enjoy. And in doing so, sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do.
100%,
right?
yes. But like I said, that's really where your love for what you do outweighs it all.
I think you have to create the separation, right?
Yes.
I create the separation of, am I willing to sacrifice certain, what am I willing to sacrifice in order to gain happiness and success in the chosen endeavor, or something that I enjoy to do, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the self-discipline combined with passion, or intent, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it.
We go back to the 3 eyes, but intent with my life and how I spend my time. That creates that success as far as healthy and happy.
Yeah.
Chaser, let me ask you this, okay? Going into how to make our purpose, we want to,
okay.
Right? Let's change our words there, okay? How to make purpose in our lives. What is your purpose fueled by, as far as on a daily basis? When things are low, when things become very monotonous, because our daily lives become monotonous, right? What fuels you to continue the chase, continue the pursuit of that passion, or of that, of that chosen endeavor?
So we can take this back to intensity, one of our 3 eyes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it comes down to discipline. I think that, there's a lot of things I do in a day that I don't enjoy. I personally don't mind getting up at 4 in the morning, but I really don't like being in the workplace at 6 o'clock at night. But when I have a boy coming and asking me for extra help, I know that deep down inside, that boy's going to remember that moment that we sat for an extra half hour and did extra work and talked and had a person-to-person conversation. I think it's really the impact, for me, I think it's the impact I can leave on others that gets me through it. Whether that be I helped somebody out with their work so that they can excel in another area, or I helped a boy get extra work in the weight room so that he could go to track practice tomorrow and not worry about, wow, I didn't lift today, I feel like crap.
Right, and not falling behind in that case. I think the self-discipline goes back to, and I think we're both fueled by the ability to help others and make a mark on others' lives, right? Serving, right?
Yes.
And that's where leadership comes into play, of understanding, right? Leadership in its true form is serving others rather than controlling others, right?
Yeah.
And so that's important to understand. But I think that the self-discipline part of getting through the monotony, getting through when maybe you forget your purpose, right? You forget why you're there, that is a form of self-love, right?
Yes.
And, there can be times where you're fueled by anger, right? And we talked about that in intensity last week, right? Is that I make a lot of things personal on purpose in the short term, and I'm very good at that, actually, which is not always a great thing, because it's resulted in some problems for me that maybe I didn't even need to deal with. But that short term fueling by anger, right, making things personal, the outside opinions of people don't believe, or they don't think I can make myself into what I want to make myself into, or et cetera, et cetera. That's great for the short term. But in the long term, when things get dry and monotonous and things start to stretch out, it's the self-love that is more important. And not only self-love, but love in general.
Yes.
Self-discipline is a form of love. But here's the thing. You can be fueled by outside opinions. You can be fueled by doubt, okay, of yourself. You have to, in order to be successful long term and not forget who you are or what path you're on, you have to be fueled by the people that believe in you.
I really like that. I think, and that's where you go back into intentionality. Surrounding yourself with those people who do believe in you. Those people who will make that hard comment of, hey, you're messing up here. But those are also the people who will have your back when things are hard, and you're doing it for them.
Right, and we're oftentimes way too hard on ourselves, right? We believe that, typically, maybe sometimes we feel isolated, that we're not good enough, et cetera, et cetera. There's somebody in your life right now who thinks you're just an amazing person, yes, right? And you're the greatest of the great. You're destined for a million things, and they believe in you more than you believe in themselves. And so when the time gets tough and you forget who you are, you forget your passion, you forget why you're there, okay? You've got to rely on that idea of somebody is believing in me, and how could I possibly ever let them down? And I think for Chaser, for you and I, we've been surrounded by family and loved ones that believe so much in us, right, in our ability to succeed in life for whatever reason, right? It's just part of who we are, yes, and how we were raised. But we've been surrounded by those types of people, and so when I get to those crossroads, it's honestly easy, when I have self-doubt, or when I feel like I'm too young for my leadership position, et cetera, whatever doubt that may be, creeping up in my mind, it's honestly easy to get through, because not only can I not let myself down, but I've got 15, 20 people that are counting on me to prove them right, for me to kind of certify that their belief and their work wasn't for nothing, because they invested in time into me, they invested love into me.
Yes.
And that's going to make a long-term fulfillment for you, a long-term drive that drives that purpose, drives the reason why you're there, drives the reason why you work so hard. When others start to doubt that, okay, I work so hard because I've got people that believe in the direction that I'm heading.
Yeah, and I really agree. We were dealt a very good deck of cards from the beginning. We have that, and it's very visible to us. Those of you who it's not as visible to, there is someone out there who is putting in effort into you. They are making a long-term investment into you because they see something great in you that you might not see. That's whether that be a coach, a teacher, even a student aide. Somebody out there is putting their time and investing into you.
Yeah, no, and I think that's important to understand, because that's the reason why we're in education, that's the reason why we're in coaching, right? Is that we want to provide support for those young people that maybe don't have that support that we were offered, right? It's about passing it forward, passing it along, and it can be hard to understand what that sort of love and belief looks like. It may be, like you said, a teacher, a coach, a boss, etc., a mentor. And, I think that can come in a lot of different forms. It can come in encouragement and constant belief. But it can also be when a teacher expects more from you, like in terms of the effort you're giving in class, or a boss expects more from you in terms of work output, or speaking up and becoming a young leader within the workforce or the company. It could also be, as far as coaches, is that coach allowing you to be average? Because if that coach is allowing you to be average, first off, he's allowing you to be a loser,
Yes.
right? And that's an unfortunate reality of it. But he does not want the best of you, And the thing that we always grew up with is, when coach stops yelling at me, or when coach stops coaching me, that's when I should be worried, right? When he stops coaching, then he's given up on me.
Right. Yeah. That's one of my biggest things. It's one of my biggest fears is when someone stops putting effort into me, because that was always drilled into my head. Coach would say if he wasn't pushing you, he didn't care about you.
Right.
And that was drilled into my head. But I think another way this could go south for a lot of people is people who think they know what they want to do, or people who think they are destined, I guess, to do something.
Yeah.
And this goes into ego, which
Yeah.
I think ego's been a big factor this week. I think we've experienced it a lot on both ends.
Yeah.
And ego's a killer. Ego will destroy everything because, best way to put it, ego leaves nothing but room for self-destruction, really.
Yeah, and it brings comfort around,
Yes.
right? So the one thing that has caused some turmoil, or I guess I shouldn't say turmoil, but difficulty in my life, is that I do let my ego get in the way of it, of myself sometimes. Not as far as work ethic or going towards the path that I want to be on goes, but I guess being a little too ambitious at time and impatient. Your purpose may take 10, 15, 20 years to realize for someone, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe your purpose, you are, a more of a common, worker at your workplace, but you really want, you really intend on becoming, the boss, or owning your own business, or moving up in the ranks. And ego can sometimes prevent us from making the right choices, and staying patient and waiting on the time that we're ready to excel in those opportunities. It works both ways. Everybody talks about the habits of the great CEOs, the performers, the generals of the army, the presidents, etc. They talk about all the habits and the ambition that those guys got, but people forget the losers. The guys on the losing side had this exact same ambition as well. The famous, obviously, example there is Napoleon, but I think that ego is definitely ego is the enemy. For those who have not read Ryan Holiday, you need to. But I've got myself in trouble at times thinking that I should, I guess, be in a better situation and chasing after that, when maybe not necessarily the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%, actually. But one thing I do want to say is the number one downfall I personally have seen with ego is, rather than it not leading me to make right decisions, I think that the biggest factor is it leads me to not have a proper self-evaluation of certain situations. I think that I've seen it myself and in myself, and I've seen it in others, that it leads to almost oblivious views. You don't see what you're doing wrong, so you're not going to improve on that situation.
Yeah, when you're blinded by that, that's it comes off as entitlement.
Yes.
Right? And a little bit of arrogance, and we all have that inside of us. I think that, if you're working extremely hard and feeling as though you are not getting what you deserve, that can be a very, very dangerous mindset to be in. Now, here's one question, and it rolls right into ego, okay? And I'm glad you brought this up, okay? So we talked about purpose and self-direction and making your purpose, right? So what happens if I am a person where maybe I don't get the promotion for 10, 15, 20 years, right? Or a real life example, if I choose to be an educator for the next 35 years, right? Not, and I think that's a realistic goal of mine. I'm not exactly sure if I want to achieve administration, right? I don't it's a whole different job. How do I maintain? You don't have a lot of power. You don't have necessarily a lot of power in your situation as far as policy and how the workforce goes, right? And not just teacher, but like just a common worker, right? And this is 99% of the population,
right?
Okay, you're not the one making decisions. So how do I maintain self-direction when I feel sort of helpless or powerless over my situation?
I think that comes right back to your non-negotiables.
Yeah.
I think that you should lead yourself. Anything you do, you should look back at that list of 5 to 7 non-negotiables. If you have more, you have more. You look back at that list and see what falls in line with it and what doesn't. If it doesn't, maybe that's not the best thing. And I think that's how all decisions should be made. And it should be all decisions should be a hard self-talk. I mean, if you're making a decision instantly, within 30 seconds, it was obviously in line or blatantly not in line with your non-negotiables.
Yeah.
But every hard decision, I think, can come back to those non-negotiables.
Yeah, and I think it going back to non-negotiable, you have to be able to control what you can control, right? And understanding that my non-negotiables and how my happiness cannot be determined by something that is outside of my control.
Correct.
If I am the one that is sort of feeling, and those feelings can be overwhelming at times because you can feel sort of small or insignificant. But understanding that the value that you provide, that you're on the path that you want to be on, and if I can control control what I can control, and I'm deliberate in my decision making, right? That's where we get stuck in the to be versus to do. But I'm deliberate in my decision making, and I'm not basing my decisions off emotion or passion. Then I can lead myself to sort of get out of those feelings, or I can understand that I am in control of my situation and how I go about sort of the decisions that lead my life.
Yes.
I don't know if that made a ton of sense, but
I mean, it comes back to good old E plus R equals O, in all honesty.
Yeah, that's true.
For those athletes out there.
That's fair. That's fair.
I say it all depends on how you respond.
Okay, so one question for you, okay? So we've got tons of people, tons of young people struggling with, like we said earlier, just getting started.
Yeah.
Deciding, what do I want to be? So what do I do if I'm a person that has no clue what I want to be? And what are my steps to making the person, or making who I am? What do I do to decide what I want to do?
I think what you really need to figure out is what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
I think...
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I really think so, and I found that out through college.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm not going to preach college to everybody, but I think the 4 years is the best experience that you can have to find yourself. Because I found out what kind of crowd I want to be with, what kind of crowd I really don't want to be with, the kind of people I do work well with, the kind of people I can't work with, and honestly, it showed me the ins and outs of who I was. I think it really showed me, that little bit of freedom showed me who I was and who I needed to be.
Yeah, that freedom allows you to mess up, right?
Yes.
And then to fix your mistakes and understand that discipline and the choices that I make represent the person I am and who I'm going to be. But you know what showed me that teaching was for me?
What was it?
Working those horrible jobs in the summer, out of football season, whatever it was that we were doing. I was like, dude, thank goodness I'm going into the classroom, because I enjoy the classroom every single day. And this over here is work.
Yes.
And it could be the opposite for some people, right? Like the classroom is a miserable, horrible place for some people.
Yeah.
They would not want my job. But I would not go back to any of those manual labor jobs that I was working if you paid me $100,000 to do it.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm right there with you. I really do enjoy time off, and I like being around athletics. That's really all I care about.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, there's a massive passion there to teach, because obviously of the family that I grew up in, and having great English teachers actually growing up. I had an 8th grade English teacher that just I mean, he led the way, right? And I was like, wow, this is just fascinating. And so, but that showed me what I didn't want to do, right? And so we're so caught up in that, and it's so hard to pinpoint. It's really like when somebody asks you, what do you do? I don't know if I could explain what I do, right? I mean, yeah, my profession, okay? My profession is teaching, coaching, and podcasting. No, but what do you do? Well, that's a different question, isn't it?
Completely different, and it flips everything. That almost ends up more subjective than it does data stricken.
Yeah, and so it's much easier to get out of the to be, right? What do I want to be? Or what do I want to do? Okay, continuing to ask that question, you're just going to spin yourself in circles, and just go out into some horrible, even if it's horrible, going out and trying to do something, and then figuring out 2 months into it, this is miserable. Boom, go to the next one.
Yes.
It's the same thing as when you're trying to decide your major in college, right? I mean, even though I knew I wanted to become an English major, I didn't necessarily have to be in that major my entire career. I just happened to go in and say, okay, this is for me. That I enjoy this type of work.
Right.
But when I took accounting 101 or whatever it was, okay, I knew right then and there I did not want to go into finance or accounting or anything of that nature with numbers, because it bored the absolute crap out of me.
Yeah, I think that's where we were really blessed, though, is we both went to liberal arts schools. We had to learn everything.
That's fair.
I said, because
big proponent of that.
Yeah, but I mean,
and it's not great for everybody, but
it's not, and there's a lot of things I do not like about the liberal arts school I went to, but I knew I wanted to go into something sports-wise, so that's why I went into the health and human kinetics field. Mm-hmm. And with that, I started out in just a blanketed HHK general. It covered everything from sports management to physical education. And that's where I decided, I'm going to pick up this and this and this, and then I'm going to be graduating college with a double major and a minor. And I kind of just pieced together the degree that I wanted. That's where I really liked having that liberal arts education.
Yeah, that makes sense. And getting that full experience, and yeah, I guess you could look at it and be critical and say, you waste 2 years of your education taking gen eds, right?
Yeah.
But I think getting that experience and everything, and sort of, did I gripe about it sometimes? Yeah, I think so. Just because I felt like there were some classes where I was like, well, I don't even like this, and it doesn't apply to me. But I think that experience of I don't like this and it doesn't apply to me goes right back to, okay, it helps me decide I do like this.
Yeah.
English and education were the highlights of my academic career, and they're the highlights of my professional career.
It's when you start to narrow down that list, you can sit there and be like, oh yeah, maybe this would be interesting. Let's try it. Didn't like it. Darn. On to the next one.
Correct. And, I think the one thing, what's the one thing that is preventing people, young people, our age, or a little bit younger than us, from, or I guess scaring. What's the biggest fear that the people around us or the people our age that prevents them from finding their purpose or making their purpose is, I think, that they're scared of what they could be.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest fears that we have to get over for us is we see exactly the potential that we have, and a lot of times that scares the living daylights out of us, and so we live down to maybe a lower expectation, so there's less responsibility, there's less pressure, and I can accept myself as average because it's easier.
Yes, and that's the comfort zone, and that's where we don't want to be. But that is the spot that most people in this world do gravitate towards. Whether that be because they're pulling themselves down or others around them are pulling themselves down. I think that word you say right there, comfortable, I think that's the key to that. And I think we do need to push ourselves to a point where we aren't comfortable. That way it pushes us to figure out, wow, maybe I do want this, or wow, maybe I don't.
And it always brings me back to the quote from Coach Carter. Marianne Williamson, I believe, is the poet. But it's our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate; it is we're powerful beyond measure. And us playing small does not serve the world, and it doesn't serve your passion, doesn't serve your purpose.
Yeah.
So, who do you want to be? Well, I certainly, if I don't know exactly what I want to do, I can always fall back to, I do want to be great in this one life, right? What is my purpose? Well, it doesn't have to be a profession, doesn't have to be action at all. Maybe your purpose is to be the best version of yourself that you can be.
Yes.
And I think that's what it has to come down to. We've talked a lot about tying your passion to your profession and making choices in line with that. But what it comes down to is, do I want to be a good person? Do I want to be remembered by someone? Do I want to fulfill all of the talents and positive things that I have been gifted in this life?
Yeah.
Living up to that, living up to the idea of you, right, that others have who support us, and living up to the idea that I want to be the best possible version of myself. That's when you're going to find that fulfillment and that happiness and that health, the health that we talk about. Yeah. Well, guys, that was a shorter episode, but we want to thank you for listening to us as we go through this journey. Again, we're not chasing followers or anything of that nature. This is sort of a living record of our experience as young men, trying to figure out how to max ourselves out in our chosen profession, in our chosen lives, and that goes through our 3 I's: intensity, iteration, and intention. We hope that listeners come out of here with some sort of advice and some sort of helpful idea that you can implement in your own life, So thank you for listening to Off the Bench. This has been episode number 4.